All right, good morning. Hello, everybody. Um, this is actually going to be a little bit of a talk. It actually started when I started putting together this list of like, how do you work with millennials? I did this for work a few years ago, and then kids started getting even younger. So I started putting together a list for how do you work with Gen A and Gen Z. So this is sort of a combination of the tips and tricks that I put together for work to teach mentors, but then also at VCF West last year, if you had either attended or watched the video, Leonard Trammell has this wonderful explanation about what happened with Commodore and the impact it had on the world, and it just hit me really hard. So I kind of combined those two into this talk, and since we have a lot of, this theme this year is about computers and education, I think it fits pretty well. So, if you haven't seen these slides before, I grew up in Hilton, Oklahoma. It's about halfway between Oklahoma City and Dallas. That's why my accent is a little off. And I got a Commodore computer in 1983, just like many other kids. And it kind of changed my world. I couldn't believe that I got such an awesome thing. So since then, after high school, I was in the Army for a while. I've worked with a lot of different companies. And I always like to show this slide because, in American football, they talk about coaching trees, and they talk about, your style could be similar because of other coaches that you've coached with. So this is my programming language tree. Things that I was paid to learn and use, and a lot of languages that I learned for free. So anyway, I wanted to start off by saying, so I'm lucky that my company I work for, iSIMS, that we sponsor a program with the high-tech high school. It's over in Lincroft, where we have it's called the Senior Internship. So each semester we have seniors come through that they spend one whole day a week working on site at iSIMS, and we teach them how to program. They often come knowing a lot of things about programming already, but we teach them how to work with enterprise software development. I've also been mentoring some 8th grade students, which you might think, 8th grade? Wow. 8th graders are amazingly capable. So we've been working with this program called the Capstone Project at Red Bank Charter School. And the Red Bank Charter School, we do 1 hour a week for the semester, not the full day. But we also teach them Python and kind of teach them about business and teach them about careers that exist in technology. So I've been doing this since 2017. We've had 23 high school students that have come through the program, and I've had 8 of the 8th graders that have come through the program. Had to change a lot after, COVID, obviously, where we ended up doing remote, and that was hard, but it also taught me some more lessons. But I'm really glad that iSIMS helps me with this. So my first rule, number 10, coordinate any mentorship or volunteer program with your company first. Now, why would your company want to do this? Well, one reason is because it's good for training other mentors. So you train someone to be a mentor of a high school student or a mentor of an 8th grade student. It's in a safe environment. They learn techniques of how to coach. And then when we have new employees come out of college and join the company, these mentors have ways of working with them. So the company likes that. Companies often want to give back to the community. So inquire about wanting to be involved in a program or something like that, and your company will probably support you. A lot of companies give volunteer days off from work as a free PTO day. We should talk to them about that. But it's also important for legal reasons. So if you're going to have high school students or 8th graders come onto a work site, you need to make sure that there's, insurance and legal coverages and things like that worked out. So that's tip number 10. All right, so step back a bit here. Hopefully you're familiar with this one, right? We choose to go to the moon. JFK gave this address in 1962 and set the whole moonshot in progress. But the thing I didn't know until recently was that in the 10 years after that speech, the number of physical science doctorates and engineering doctorates either tripled or quadrupled. I think those are related. And I also like to think that those numbers of advanced degrees that happened in the 60s, I think it had something to do with the 70s and 80s where consumer electronics started to explode. I think there's a relationship there. So then I go into the Leonard Tramiel story. He kind of starts this off. There's a couple of videos here I highly recommend you watch them. People ask him, like, what would happen if Commodore didn't exist? And he says, if Commodore didn't exist, there would still be personal computers. Right, this was already kind of in motion. There were things happening with the, TRS-80s, and IBM was getting close to doing something. So personal computers would have happened. But he goes on to say, the real thing that Commodore did to the market, because of his father's relentless drive to get the price down, many more people bought computers and became familiar with them. So when the industry was ready for an influx of engineers, they were available. So he says that, and I just feel it right here in my chest, because this is me. This is my career. This is why I am here and not somewhere in Oklahoma working in an oil field. And this is the same story for millions of other people that were affected because the price point was such that you could get a computer into a house, that a kid could then have access to that computer and learn about it. And then that changes their life and their career and everything about what they could have been doing. This was no longer where computers were only available in universities and big businesses. This was computers for the masses, not the classes, right? So I think that had a huge impact, right? What he's saying is the same thing. How the moonshot created engineers and built the consumer electronics in the 70s and 80s. Now, this generation suddenly was available when the internet started becoming a big thing, right? So these kids that grew up with the Commodore 64s, including myself, that drove things to the 90s and the aughts. So I'm talking about generations. If you haven't ever heard of this word of like generational cohorts, there's these segments, people born between certain time frames. And these people surprisingly share a lot in common. Now, I mean, not everybody fits into these descriptions, but most people within those generational cohorts, within those years, that really has things that they've experienced. World events, changes in the economy, changes in the social structure, technology advances. These are all true, that they impact us and affect the way that we think about the way that we interact, think about the way we do with the world. So, Gen Z, people born between 97 and 2012. These are a lot of school-age children right now, college-age children between 11 and 26. Companies care about this information. There is oodles and oodles of research. And it really is, in some ways it feels like fortune-telling, because they're like trying to say like, all these people that fit into this box behave this certain way. But the truth is that a lot of it's very true. So, Gen Z, like I said, we're interacting with them now. Generation Alpha is coming up. Their ages either, they're below 9 right now, but they're not far behind. All right, so tip number 9. Realize that these Gen Z kids speak a different language and they don't want to learn yours. This is something happened to me with a Cub Scout event several years ago. A kid asked me, why am I putting the save icon into the computer? So he knew what the save icon was. He didn't know it was storage. So that started a whole nother topic there. So realize that they have come from different places. They might not know, a time before TV could not be paused. They might not know that you had to use a paper map to navigate. They might not know that you had to have a book of telephone numbers to know how to call somebody. So, but don't be Grandpa Simpson, right? Don't talk about how hard it was. Talk about how you had to walk uphill both ways to go to school. That doesn't reach them. But I like to use that as a way to talk about how things have progressed. I will talk about, it just used to take a long time. It used to take us a long time to write short programs. And now because of these libraries, now because of these code generators, we can get so much more done now. You can talk about how we have so much better tools. And just imagine what those tools could become. So use that as a way to inspire and talk about progress, not as a way to complain about how easy they have it now compared to what you had to do. All right, and tip number 8. Information access has changed how they learn both at home and school. When I was in school, and probably most of you, there was a lot of memorization that was involved with being at school. So much so that there were books that would teach people how to be better at memorizing things. You had to know all these dates about what things happened in history, and then you had tests where you had to recall those dates. You had to remember things like the Pythagorean theorem, and you'd be tested on, like, do you remember how to do this? But remember, we live in the future now. So it's not what you know, it's what you do with it. There's a lot of different people that talk about this concept. And it's because you can find facts. You don't have to remember them. You can say, hey, Alexa, what year was the Dutch tulip panic? And Alexa will tell you all about it. You can say, Siri, show me a picture of a dancing monkey. And it will show you a picture of a dancing monkey. Information retrieval and memorization is no longer a skill that you have to survive. So schools have been transitioning around this for years. And we have to realize that when you're working with these kids and trying to mentor them, that you shouldn't give them tasks that are based upon knowing something. If you're coding something, your IDE will have IntelliSense, and it will help you with the syntax. You don't have to memorize syntax even. But make sure you give them projects that have an outcome. This is what schools do. Have them set a goal. Have them have a place they want to reach with this project, with this mentorship. And let them kind of build their own learning path for how they get there. But don't make it around facts. All right, number 7. These kids are really good about using virtual tools. But what surprises me, they really value in-person experiences. You recognize these logos, and of course, you know the pandemic had such a huge impact to school, and everybody had to go remote. They talk to each other in Discord and on Tumblr. They interact with each other across the globe, and this is ways that we didn't have. We didn't have the same idea and concepts of people living on different coasts was even such an amazing thing, the differences between East and West Coast of the United States. And now these kids have access to news and information and can talk with people that are across the globe. And they're really good at doing it. But I find something interesting. When I talk to the high school interns, and this started during, we were starting to come out of the pandemic and we could have people come back into the office again, I would ask the high school interns, hey, do you want to work remote or do you want to start coming in the office? And every single one of them says, I want to come in the office. I want to be with people. They're basically sick of being a virtual school. They're basically tired of doing that. They want to they crave this idea of being able to work with people and work in a work office setting and talk to people in person. So every one of them comes in. So I use this as an opportunity. I teach them communication skills. Some of it's very straightforward, like how to maintain eye contact appropriately. This is a meme if you've ever seen this from Reddit. Another thing, this is something else I haven't been doing it as much post-COVID, but pre-COVID, I'd teach them how to shake hands. Yes. I'd have 8th graders and high school students come in, and we'd have this like really limp handshake. No one else has taught them that. And I would teach them, like, here's the way you should to greet somebody. Here's the way you should maintain eye contact. Here's how your body language tells people what you're interested or not. Yes?
How do you do that? Because I do the same.
I usually do it one-on-one. I don't do it like when I first meet them, because we're usually in a group. I will take the kid over, like, all right, hey, when we have an opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation, like, when you first meet somebody, it's a sign of respect. And I'm like, all right, shake my hand. And they kind of do that. I'm like, now, if you feel it and you have a firm grip on it, this is you feeling me and me feeling you. This is our way to make contact and give each other respect. Seems to be successful. I've had, like I said, I haven't been doing it since they're still a little handshake anxiety, but pre-pandemic, that was what I did all the time. Thanks for the question.
I shake their hands and they look away at something and I give them a little squeeze on the hand and I say, look me in the eye when you do that. Let's try it again.
I like that. I like that. It's a skill. It's a skill, and if I really I like to think it's having an impact on some kids. I just can't imagine how people will get their relationships and some of the other things. Maybe I'm being old-fashioned in this one, but I think that's one I like teaching a lot too. All right, number 6. And this is going to be kind of weird, but this is true. They've been consuming content, but they sometimes struggle to be a creator. Now, there's lots of creators. I'm not saying that this is all of them. You've seen they create, just in the time that we've been talking here, there's probably been 10,000 videos uploaded to TikTok, right? But as a percentage of both their time and a percentage of the population of these kids, they tend to be consumers more than creators. And I think there's reasons behind this. One, I grew up with instant-on programming. The minute you turned on a machine, you were in a programming environment. If you wanted to do anything with that machine, you had to learn how to program. If you wanted to load a game program, unless it was on a cartridge, you had to know a little bit about something about how to interact with a keyboard. Now, part of it might be because there's like this instant, this attention span issue or whatnot, but getting started with programming sometimes is a lot harder than it used to be. You have to find environments. Often on your phone, there's no way to get an easy environment to program anything on your phone. Same thing on this machine I have in front of you. There's no tools out of the box that allow me to program it, and if I wanted to program it, it's really hard to get started. So what I use, this is primarily for the 8th graders. We use things that are easy to set up. We have to make sure that they get fast results. We use a programming environment called REPL. REPL runs in a browser. It's immediate. It turns on straight away. No config, no setup. It's really, really quick. So we use this so that they can use it on any computer they have a browser. They can go have access to this. We also use, Arduinos are awesome, but sometimes there's a lot of setup involved there. So there's 2 things we use. One is the BBC Microbit. The other one is this Adafruit Circuit Playground. Now these are pretty cool because they have buttons, they have lights. You can get a kid to show that they can do a project and it will do something with very little setup. No jumpers, no wires, no cables. You can get something really, really quick. So I emphasize again, help them become creators, but you have to help them become creators by having a low bar of entry, like we did when we could turn on my Commodore 64, and within 3 seconds I could be in a programming environment. So, number 5, flexibility. Flexibility is in their DNA because they've learned that things change fast. How long did you have your first computer? How many years did you use it? I'm assuming you probably used it for several years. Same thing for your first video game console. You probably used that thing for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years. But now, today, one more way I can think about this is software. You used to get software on a disk. You used to get software on a CD. How often would you get updates to that software? Really infrequently, because the company would have to manufacture these things and put them in the mail to be delivered by a human in a truck to put them into your mailbox. And now all these things are different. How often do you get a new laptop? How often do you get a new phone? How often do you get updates to your software? Same thing. I would assume that over this weekend, your phone is probably auto-updated and downloaded probably 3 or 4 different updates to programs and applications on your phone, when we used to only get updates a couple times a year, if we were lucky. So we had this idea that things change slowly. Now this group of Gen Z kids, they've grown up and everything's always changing with them. And of course, COVID happened. And everything moves fast, and they're used to that. They're used to that in ways that we maybe aren't. And I first found this out. My lesson one about this was that working with millennials, and millennials were maybe like overscheduled kids, if you think about it that way. I kind of had to adopt this thing. If we had to do something disruptive at work, we had to change something, we had to change a schedule, we had to change a process, I would kind of always approach them like, hey, you know, I just want to let you know ahead of time, we're about to change this, here's why, you know, I apologize for changing this, I appreciate your flexibility, you know, this was something I learned to do, and people seem to appreciate, you know, that for that generation. And then when things like that would happen with some of my students, they were like, yeah, okay, sure, no problem. And I'm like, wow, okay, so I'm like approaching this change as like this big, hard thing that people are scared of, and I really realized that the Gen Z kids are used to it. They're like, yeah, whatever, no problem. So I don't have to like plan and apologize and try to like, you know, tell them that everything's okay because something changed. They're just like accepting of it. But with that greater flexibility, sometimes it is hard to keep their attention. So I almost have to find a way to intentionally do something that's unexpected to keep it fresh. So I have to like almost, let's do something that we didn't schedule in advance. Let's say, hey, let's do this today instead. So being able to change is a good thing now when I've been sort of like living a life for my Gen X and millennials where change was a bad thing. So use change. All right, on to number 4. Your local librarian needs your help. So first of all, I would warn you, don't Google this unless you have a safe search filter on. There's a lot of weird images related to local librarians needing help. But my company, iSIMS, has sponsored some programs. We've worked with both the Middletown Library and with the Monmouth County Library System. We've done a lot of things with the Girls Who Code, Virtual Teens Who Code, try to open it up to more than just girls. There's that Circuit Playground there, the Adafruit programming microcontrollers for teens that we run. And why do librarians need this? Librarians have facilities, they have buildings, they have newsletters, they have all these wonderful things. And they usually want to support programs for kids. That's their primary audience. We want to get kids into the library. But they often don't have good budgets, so they can't hire someone to come in and run a program. They often don't have the skills or the volunteers to set up and run a program like this. So librarians have been very receptive to anybody we've approached and said, hey, we want to try to help. We want to help run a program. We want to help run our summer camp to teach children how to code. And librarians are very helpful and they want to get involved. So reach out to your librarian. All right, number 3, as well as librarians, you'll be surprised that schools also want to create programs, but they also need volunteers. Teachers are so underappreciated and teachers are so underpaid. So I really encourage people to reach out to your middle schools, your high schools. They often have a volunteer coordinator and they are happy to have a conversation with you about being a volunteer. Teachers have to sponsor some of these clubs, and it's amazing to me, but sometimes the teachers have to pay for any incidental expenses for those clubs. I'm sorry, yes?
There's a logo missing, and that's First Robotics.
That's a good one. Yes.
Mentor team.
The robot, yeah, there's a lot of, I guess I lean more towards coding, but there's a lot of good robotic stuff out there too. And my point for the logos really is that these organizations want to exist, they want to help. If you reach out to them, they'll be happy to give you access and happy to help you put together something that you can teach these kids. But even if yourself, as you struggle, you don't have to create a program from scratch. These are great organizations that can help you. The Girls Who Code I've mentioned, the Hack Club, Code Club. Cyber Patriot is one that I'm kind of a fan of. There's a big Cyber Patriot, multiple Cyber Patriot teams at Red Bank Regional. It's a cybersecurity competition, really well done. So there's places you can go to get help yourself, So you can have the content and the structure and the tips and tricks for how you can make one of these clubs successful. So reach out. Now, the next step here is a twofer. I've talked about high schools, but community colleges also have clubs that need mentors, and it's a little bit different. Big four-year universities have students that live on campus. They have a lot of free time. They're there, and those clubs can be a little more successful, both because they live on campus and both because those students are there for 4 years. So you can get them involved as freshmen, and they'll participate in these clubs for the entire time they're at school. Community colleges, your students are there for typically 2 years. They typically don't live on the campus. So community colleges have trouble putting a club together. Another reason, community colleges are becoming crazy popular. Gen Z kids see that their parents are struggling with student loan debt. They're not really sure if there's a value in a 4-year education. But they think there is value in education itself, so community colleges are kind of having a nice little renaissance right now. So are trade schools. So are, they have more people, but the teachers are also kind of struggling with the same problem. The teachers have time issues, budget issues. I talked to the department chair at Brookdale Community College in Lincroft, that's up the road here. And he says, yeah, we have a computer club, but we can't ever get anybody to run it. You want to run it? You can just come on down. You can be the president. So they need help. They need help. But they've got facilities, they've got communication channels, they've got access to these students. They need help putting it together. So use your skills as somebody who can organize and show up and help them. So my last one, I guess I'm borrowing from a slogan here, but I'm saying just do it. I tell this to my mentors all the time. A lot of mentors are afraid to start. Part of it is imposter syndrome. They're like, oh, I don't know how to talk to kids. I don't know how to do this. I'm not good at this. But I'm like, you don't have to be good at it. You don't have to know all the answers. You just have to show up. You have to show up, and it's part of the experience to work with them together. Hey, I don't know the answer to this problem either, but let's go try to figure it out together. So the first problem is just getting over that first step. And I just encourage you to start by breaking out of that, find a way to help build that younger generation of engineers that will be coming forth with. I don't know what challenges they'll be facing. I'm not sure where the next inflection point is that will change technology. Maybe it's here already. I don't know. But I encourage you just to start. Be there to support another student, another person, another human. They'll appreciate it, and you'll feel better for doing it. So that's pretty much my top 10 ways of how I think you have to be cool with both Gen Z and Gen A. So I'm way ahead of time, so I've got, this is my last slide, so I'll just open it up for any questions or thoughts. All right. I'll post the slides and reach out if you want to talk. I'll be around all day. All right. Question, go ahead. That's a good question. So kind of summarizing, the question is basically, he understands how you need to start with the instant own idea, but how do you kind of get people to go to the next level to realize that not everything is easy? Is that a good summary? Yeah. I think of it two ways. Because I work with some of those high-tech high students, I am amazed at the things they do. But then I start working with some of the 8th grade students, and it almost takes me maybe 2 or 3 days to get through to them to understand that when they type these instructions, the computer is doing what you tell it to do. So I like leaning heavier onto the instant on theory so that you can get things started faster. Then as they get that spark, they get that creativity, you have to encourage them to kind of continue over that hump. Now, I agree that the plateau exists. The plateau existed for me when I was a kid, where I had video games. I'm like, oh, those are so cool. And then I was starting to learn how to program it a little bit, and I was really disappointed when I was working with sprites and there was no command that said, move the alien around. I had to do a lot of math and do a lot of the commands, so I was like, wow, that was hard. I really struggled to make it over that hump. But it's about feeling that you have someone there to support you, feeling that you have someone there that will help you to like learn those things. I think it comes around. So I don't know if I have a technique. It's probably a little different for every person. It's all about like trying to find that spark, setting that spark of creativity off, and then they'll be going. Good question, though. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, I'll be around. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you very much.